Hello, I am Alon Burstein. I am a visiting assistant professor and Israel Institute Fellow in the Department of Political Science at the University of California, Irvine, and I am here to give you the latest updates, the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. If anyone is interested in updates from the previous days or from the first days of the war, please click on the links in the first comments below. So starting with the aftermath of the initial attack, Israel has identified 126 Israelis that are being held in the Gaza Strip by Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. This does not mean that those are all the people that have been taken hostage. There are reports in Israel of upwards of 400 different Israelis that are currently considered missing. However, it is possible that the rest of these Israelis are people who were killed in the initial attack, and we now have reports that Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad tried to also hijack their bodies back to the Gaza Strip, so that may be where that discrepancy in the numbers is. Going to some of the ongoing fighting, there were no reports released today on the exact amount of air raids that Israel carried out in the last 24 hours. However, the Palestinian Ministry of Health is reporting that 300 more Palestinians died and 800 were wounded in the last 24 hours in these attacks. These brings the numbers of Palestinians that have been killed since Israel began its retaliations coming close to or possibly even surpassing 2,000, and this is already coming close to the number of Palestinians that died in Israel's Operation Cast Lead of 2014, which lasted over 7 weeks. This now is going on for 1 week. Meanwhile, in Israel's retaliations, there were some high-profile assassinations today of figures in the Hamas movement and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. These include the head of Hamas's air unit, 2 senior commanders of the Nukhba, which is the commando forces of Hamas that carried out their raids of October 7th. Specifically, Israel managed to assassinate one of the commanders who was in charge of the raids into 2 kibbutzim down south, as well as the leader of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad that was in charge of the air units in northern Gaza. At the same time, there were continuous barrages of rockets and missiles from the Gaza Strip, pummeling the south of Israel and also reaching all the way to the center in Tel Aviv, Gush Dan, Petah Tikva, Ashkelon, and Ashdod, to name a few. In addition, there are continuous attempted invasions of terrorists from the Gaza Strip into Israel. 2 of them were killed today as they were trying to infiltrate Nachal Oz from the Gaza Strip. Moving on to the West Bank, there were 2 high-profile arrests of Hamas leaders in the West Bank amidst 56 more people who were arrested, and there are signs of increasing settler violence and terrorism against Palestinians in the West Bank. The IDF specifically issued a statement today asking Israeli settlers in the West Bank to not take the law into their own hands and to leave handling terrorism to the IDF. So this is something else that's brewing meanwhile in the West Bank. Moving to the north of Israel, Hezbollah continues to very, very slowly be pulled into the fray while not throwing its full weight into the attack against Israel. There were 30 mortar fires today that were fired onto Har Dov, injuring several soldiers. Hezbollah took responsibility, and Israel retaliated against Hezbollah targets. In addition to that, rockets were launched today from Syria again. Again, I remind viewers, this is not the Syrian army. These are groups within Syria that are launching rockets against Israel, and Israel retaliated with artillery fire into the sites in Syria from where launches occurred. In addition, Hamas claimed responsibility for an attempted cross-border incursion from Lebanon into Israel. Hamas has a presence in Lebanon. This was built over the last several years. And yesterday there was a detonation in the fence between Israel and Lebanon, an attempted infiltration. Hamas is now taking responsibility, saying that those were 3 of its activists in Lebanon, and that they were killed trying to infiltrate Israel from the north. Now, a couple of things looking towards the future of Israel's retaliation. There was a report in the New York Times today that Israel is planning in its ground invasion to take over Gaza City, which is the biggest city in the Gaza Strip, in the north of the Gaza Strip, and eradicate Hamas's political and military infrastructure. The IDF itself is repeatedly stating that it is prepared for its ground invasion, that there are hundreds of thousands of soldiers surrounding the Gaza Strip already, and that different divisions have already been given their assignments, what they are going to do when the invasion occurs. Leading up to that, the IDF announced today that they are opening 2 corridors within the Gaza Strip that will be safe highways from which citizens in north of Gaza can evacuate down south, and the IDF is repeatedly calling on citizens in the Gaza Strip to flee down south in preparation of the IDF's attack on Gaza City. Hamas, meanwhile, has called on its citizens not to go down south and to stay put. However, different reports suggest that already 500,000 people may have fled to the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. At the same time, the IDF has been condemned by the World Health Organization because of its order to evacuate 22 hospitals, along with the evacuation orders in the north of the Gaza Strip, and the World Health Organization has said this simply cannot happen in any realistic way, and these hospitals are going to be in danger in Israel's invasion. Now, turning to some of the political developments that occurred throughout the last 24 hours. So in addition to unwavering support that Israel has been receiving from the different powers around the world, Germany today called upon Israel to also take into consideration the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Israel, since the beginning of its retaliations, has tightened the siege in the Gaza Strip, cutting off also food supplies, water supplies, and electricity, and there is growing concern of a humanitarian disaster, and Germany has called upon Israel to take this into consideration. Meanwhile, China has urged the United States to put pressure on Israel to avoid any human casualties to any human civilians, to put pressure on Israel to not let the situation spiral out of control, stating the right to self-defense does not justify harming innocent civilians in retaliations. Some other developments. France announced today that 17 of its citizens were among those killed in the initial attack and that 15 of its citizens are still missing. And the United States announced that 29 of its citizens were killed in the initial attack and 15 of them are still missing. This indicates that it is possible that some of the hostages that are held in the Gaza Strip have dual citizenship with France and the United States, which is going to, on the one hand, complicate things for the Hamas movement because now they are actually developing rivalries also with these other countries, but will also enable some pressure valves for Hamas to use because there are also Palestinian prisoners that they would like released in different countries like the United States. So this remains to be seen if this becomes part of the future negotiations should they occur. Meanwhile, in Israel, Avigdor Lieberman, it was reported, and his Israel Beitenu party were going to join the unity government. So this is adding another level of unity to the government preparation of the retaliation. Avigdor Lieberman said that these were premature statements, but that he is happy to join the war cabinet and help influence the way the war should go. It should be noted that Lieberman for years has called on Israel to dismantle the Hamas and to retaliate against the Hamas and to wipe it off the face of the earth. However, when he was Minister of Defense, he did not do any of these things, so it remains to be seen how influential he will be. And in other developments, Iran today sent a message to Israel through the United Nations stating that while it does not want to enter into a regional war, if Israel continues to intensify its retaliations in the Gaza Strip, it may have no choice. It is noteworthy that this comes at the tail end of two high-profile meetings that the Iranian foreign minister had with the different resistance organizations, the terror organizations Hezbollah and Hamas. One occurred in Beirut yesterday, we reported on, and one occurred today in Qatar when the foreign minister of Iran met with the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, before issuing this threatening statement. In addition to that, the United States has updated its travel warning for its citizens to Israel, stating that violence could erupt at any moment and citizens should consider the necessity of their trips to there. The U.S. has also called on its own citizens in the Gaza Strip to adhere to the IDF orders and evacuate down south, suggesting that they may be able to flee through the Rafah crossing. And finally, very associated to Iran's threat, the U.S. has confirmed it is now sending a second aircraft carrier, the USS Eisenhower, into the area in order to bolster its regional ability to retaliate if any other actors join into the fray. So this is part of the United States' attempt to make sure that Iran does not make good on its threat and does not join into the battles with Israel, or at least send Hezbollah to join in the battles with Israel by bolstering its own U.S. presence in this region. Those are our updates. Very intense Saturday, and I will be back tomorrow.